Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm so glad that we're having this special attention placed on our gifted population. I know that Jessica has some great ideas, and she's also going to have some opportunity created so that you all can share voice. But I'm very excited that we are not forgetting our gifted students. And look forward to meeting with you all so that we can improve and increase services to the special group of kids.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Danny.
you.
All right, and I'm going to get trucking along. So session materials today, if you guys notice, you should have the link to this presentation in the chat. There's also a fun thing called our session launch agenda, which goes over all the links of all the things you need. That's the thing there in the middle. And then we have a gifted grass catcher bingo. So if you could open that up, make a copy of the grass catcher bingo so you can take notes as we go along. It is going to be if you turn it into me, you get a prize. I got a Cricut, and so I'm making all the things. So just saying, you're gonna want it because I take basically everything from your interest survey and I make some things, and it's fun. So if you want a prize, download that gifted grass catcher bingo and fill in information as it goes. I also like to have things modeled for you as you might do with your staff. So this might be a fun thing to kind of go along so you can give that to your staff when we do this presentation for what we call the roadshow. So if you haven't already, you're going to open and access these three things that will give you access to all the information that we'll be covering today. So any questions on these documents before we get going? Oh, quickly, if you go to the invite in RSD, all the links are in the calendar invite as well. So you can get them there, you can get them here. I've like Hunger Games broadcast it into the sky. It's literally all the links are everywhere. So you're bound to find them. If you need them, let me know. And then if you click on them, it actually opens up the document itself. So I've linked all the things. So let's move on. Okay, so really quick about me. Started off at Barr, like I established earlier, been in the district for about 12 years, did some gen ed, K-3, gifted, served K-8 as a resource teacher, have been an IC for 3 years over at Valley View, been a gifted coordinator for 7, got my endorsement a few years back, and I am pleased to support the district as the first year of the gifted coordinator. So we are gonna see how I do all the things, but I think I'll be good with the amazing people that I have in this room to support. So big goal for me is to support our gifted kids to get what they deserve and to find the ones that we know are gifted that we may have just not gotten yet. So big goals there. So I need to update this with our awesome Chavez ad with Elizabeth, but we have officially filled all our slots for coordinators. So some of us that haven't joined us today had different things going on, so I'm touching base with them. Hello, Miss Juan, nice to see you again. All TG Bar coming back. Nice.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Sorry.
It's okay. And so if someone here could be awesome for me and just drop the link again in the chat, that would be awesome for anyone coming in too. All right, so if you haven't done so already, please feel free to take the survey that I sent you. This is just gonna first help me get to know you. And I also build our session calendar off of that. So if Miss McAllister has learned all about gifted standards, I'm not gonna make her sit in the session on gifted standards or she will probably be going crazy like a lot of our gifted kids are. So I'm going to be adapting our sessions based on what you put in your interest survey. So it's important that you fill that out for me. If you haven't done it, please do so, because I'm gonna build our topics off of that input from the survey. All right, so our big first piece is basically I'm going to go over the gifted roadshow, which is the presentation that you have that you can adapt for your staff. So this might be something you've seen in the past. It might be a variation of what you've been given before or something you've created on your own. But the big purpose of this is really so all of us can streamline our information that we're giving out to our amazing community and to our staff about the gifted programming. So These are our session outcomes. I'll give you about 30 seconds to read over those. So obviously, a lot of outcomes. There's a lot of information, and I know it's from 4 to 5 today. So I'm going to try to not explode your brains too much, but lots of information that we're going to go over, maybe some as a review. So this is a quote from Renzulli, Sally, who is Joe Renzulli, who is a big change agent in the gifted world. It's his wife. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but a lot of the times we have our little gifted kids, they run through first grade, second grade, third grade. They're just rocking it. They're always the superstar students. They have no trouble with reading. Then they hit 4th, 5th grade and they hit a block wall because they're finally challenged. And they get into this feeling of not enoughness. And it's because sometimes as a system we fail them. We fail to challenge them at an early age. So they're going through life thinking everything's supposed to be easy. And when it's not, they shut down. So the big point of that is that's why we have to focus on our gifted kids, to try to get them so they don't hit that jaded wall at 4th, 5th grade. Here are some myths of the gifted. This is straight from the Gifted Kids Survival Guide, which we are working with Miss White and Miss Fortillo to get this as a copy for our gifted kiddos. We have a gifted grant that we're going to apply for. With that grant, we'd really like to purchase these books for the kiddos. So it's this little fun book that's the Gifted Kids Survival Guide. How great would that be for kids to feel like, wow, I'm important enough and invested enough that I have this text. So that's our big first goal with those gifted funds. I like to go over these with the kids too, because they get real passionate about it. But I want you to use your reaction tool if you've heard this before, or if it surprises you. So depending on if you have the update for Zoom, I'm going to read it off, and then please give me a reaction tool. Gifted kids are all high achievers and do well at everything. You've heard that before, maybe have heard people had that misconception about gifted kiddos. Maybe it's surprising. Gifted kids don't need help. If they're truly gifted, they should already know things on their own. That might be something that we hear teachers say, oh, they're gifted, they'll figure it out. I got some laughing faces, love it. Gifted students are self-directed. They know what they want in their lives. Some sort of reaction tool on that. Thank you. The students who are gifted are always the ones that have good behavior, just as good as their grades. Those are synchronous. I love the laughing faces. Everyone's like, yeah, right. Because we know that's typically how we spot a gifted kid. And then gifted kids should always serve as examples to others. They should always have that extra work. I kind of think about this. They're serving as the teacher's helper. That's their job. So those are some of the myths, some of the things we want to debunk with our teachers. Is the gifted kid great? Absolutely. They probably love being your sidekick sometimes, but understanding that it's also something that weighs on them as well. So something we like to kind of go over is, would you think that these people would have been identified as gifted? So Einstein, he was 4 before he could even speak and 7 before he could read. Could you imagine someone saying, oh, you know, I would refer him for gifted? They're going to be like, well, he can't even read. But we see the amazing things that come from him. Thomas Edison was told by one of his teachers he was too stupid to learn anything. That wasn't the teacher referring him for gifted for sure that year. And then a newspaper editor fired Walt Disney because he had no good ideas. And so thinking about these amazing people in history, and if they were maybe overlooked a little bit. So it's important to look at our kids too from that lens and look at creativity, because all these people are creative in different ways. Probably not the textbook way. but that's our job, is to find them in their different ways of creativity. So the first thing I want you to do is really take a look and reflect on the kids that you have on your campus. We have our numbers in our brain of how many gifted kids we have. When you pull up this spreadsheet here in a minute, I want you to look at those little names and picture their faces in your brain. We're going to do an activity with this later, so it's important that you can access this information. If you're in this presentation here, you can click on this link and it'll open to the main spreadsheet, and you can find your school at the bottom. I want you to reflect, and I'm going to give you 3 minutes to reflect and drop it in the chat. If we need more time, I'll kind of touch base. But you're going to reflect on how many kids you have identified, not your duplicates, because you'll notice that there's certain areas they've maybe potentially double qualified in. What areas they qualify in, you're notating that. And are there any kids that surprise you, or any kids that you're like, ah, yep, for sure. So thinking about that, really quick, can one person be super brave and tell me about the task that we're doing right now? Come off mute.
Read the spreadsheet, identify the kiddos, not the duplicate ones, the areas in which they qualify, and the kiddos that would surprise us.
Boom, let's clap for a reaction tool. Hey, we got it, we're smart. All right, I'm gonna give you 3 minutes to do that. Have fun. 3 minutes to do that. You know, this does it to us all day during teaching, and have fun. Awesome. Thank you for taking that time to go through and reflect. I really appreciate some of the reflections that I see in the chat. Some of them being, wow, we don't have as many kiddos as I would have thought, and especially looking at certain certain grade levels, primary, maybe limiting the amount of qualifications there. It might be surprising or concerning. Some people not surprised at all about the kiddos on the list. Some surprised with the qualifying areas because they might see a deficit in some of the content area that they teach. So I appreciate you guys kind of taking a moment to look at that. It's important, especially in your role, to kind of have that global view of our kids and our numbers. And I'm going to come over in a minute why it's important to look and understand that number. So thank you for looking at the kids as those numbers, but also seeing their little faces in your brain there. And for your first time, you're going to see their little names, and then you're going to show up on campus and you're going to go, oh, yeah, okay, I see it. So I appreciate that. So we're going to dive into the next part. A lot of this I am going to go over quite quickly. So a lot of that being you are not new to a lot of this information. At any point, if you have questions, we are always feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll come back to it after a section. So before we move on to most sections, I'll say, does anyone have questions about blank? So you will have a chance to ask questions, but we'll save it to the end of every section, okay? So the first thing to kind of think about is the definition for giftedness, which a lot of the times we have as a misconception, as giftedness is a high achievement sort of thing, which it's not the case necessarily. Giftedness is the potential for high performance. By looking just as at achievement, we highly miss our under achieving population of kiddos. And so it's very important to understand that giftedness is that potential for high performance, and not necessarily in all areas. So while a student might be high in one area and might be gifted in that and have high aptitude or ability in one area, he could have a deficit in another. So understanding that it is not synchronous, it is asynchronous, and we'll get into a little more of what that looks like with characteristics. But when you talk about definition of gifted, if someone's saying, well, they don't score high on tests, this is the great place to insert the myth buster. Well, it's the potential for high performance, not necessarily the performance itself. So as ADE states, we are required as a district and anyone in Arizona to provide services for students that have qualified in the 3 areas of either verbal, quantitative, or nonverbal. So that is what you'll see a lot of VQ or NV stands for. And we must differentiate in those core areas of content, process, product, and then they just added environment. So those are the 4 core areas in which we must differentiate for our gifted students. How that is adapted to Roosevelt is we want to make sure that we understand and don't allow socioeconomic stances to make it difficult to find our gifted kiddos. And so what we try to do is we cast the wider net by aiming for 10 to 13% of our population. And what we can do with that is we look at how we can adapt our percentiles to find our gifted students, understanding that language could potentially be a barrier and other socioeconomic and demographics. So something that's important to note, 90th percentile is our cutoff for RSD, 85 if they are qualified EL and identified as such on their float form, where they have Spanish or another language as their primary language. So what that means is important to understand when we look at qualifying if they don't hit that percentile ranking. So important to know. Here's your action item for this piece is if we're trying to find 10 to 13% of your population, I want you to take the number of current students you have against this amount of students about that you have at your school and tell me what percentage you should have of your gifted kiddos. So for example, I met with Marissa Glaviano earlier from Kennedy, She had 7 kiddos. She has about 400. She's looking for 40 kids. So she's got 7 out of 40. But she's ready to find the other ones. So if you guys could come off real quick and tell me your goal number of how many kids you are trying to find this year.
Well, at Bush, my goal is going to be around 45-ish,
Awesome.
hopefully.
I don't even know how many kids we have.
Approximate.
Okay. At Jorgensen, it'd be about 30.
I think at Sunland it'd be about 50, I want to say.
At Lassen, it'll be about an additional 20.
We'll have 2 more people come off and tell us our goal numbers.
I have a
Jessica,
question.
can I have a question. Yeah, I have a question too.
Okay,
So
Jenny first.
you said 10% of the population. We already have identified 10%. We have 30 students that are identified as gifted, and our I can't find words right now. We have about 300 students at our school.
Let's
So
clap. Let's
do we
clap.
need-
Let's clap for Jenny.
So do we need to find 30 more?
Well, I want you to obviously be looking for more, but when you're looking at qualifying and if you're hitting your mark, it looks like you're hitting your mark. So it's one of
We-
those.
Well, I was
one of
going to say we need to identify our younger students because we don't have any in kinder or first. So
Yeah. And that's something I kind of look at too. When you look at your numbers and if they're really high in 2 grade levels, we know sometimes we have some really high flying packs of kids. We all know we have some of those grade levels. You're just like, whew, that is a bright bunch. But if we're not seeing a lot in some bands, it might be because we're not doing what we need to find them. They're there, we just haven't found them.
okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
so with that, in Roosevelt, we do test for kindergarten and first grade.
We do test for kinder and first grade.
Okay. Secondly, at Amy Houston, it do the kids like come to us with already the label of gifted?
Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
I've had it before in the past where I've had gifted kiddos who've worked through Amy Houston, and then I would continue servicing them there. So it would be one of those things that if a kiddo went from, let's say, Sunland over to you, then that coordinator would say, hey, gifted kiddo coming your way.
Okay.
So we are going to talk about screening in a second, and I'm super excited because Dr. Danny shares my vision for blanket screening, so I'm super stoked about that. And I think a lot of you are like, yes, why aren't we doing that? So that is something we're going to be talking about in our plans for, but that's going to help especially for those grade levels like the kinders, that a lot of the times we don't find them qualifying. Okay, so this is the big piece for ADE. We have to submit a scope and sequence. Basically this year, we want to get together a task force that works specifically on creating the scope and sequence based on our new vision for supporting our gifted kids in Roosevelt. So I do have a plug here in a little bit that says if you want to be a part of that, you can sign up and be a big change agent for our gifted kids here in Roosevelt. So currently, we have one submitted on file with ADE from 2018-2019. We are in the process of getting that updated. And if you want to be a part of that, you can. All right, blowing through really quick. Screening and testing. Current test is COGAT online. You've probably heard of the Cognitive Abilities Test, COGAT. That's done through that Riverside Data Manager that you see on some of those apps on the iPads. We are looking at Naglieri to support our EL learners because it is a test that really takes away that language barrier component because it is a nonverbal assessment only. So we can hopefully try to find some of our ELs that we miss on the COGAT because COGAT is very language heavy. And then just as we were talking about a little bit before, using something like the Ravens to blanket screen in certain grade levels. And what that means is we just have to be consistent. So if it's like, hey, we're going to blanket screen kinder, and then we'll blanket screen third. So we have some entry points to try to help. We have that obviously as a plan, but that's one of those things we're hoping to try to help identify more kiddos. And then you'll notice the Kingor observation instrument. We do have a training as a gifted coordinator cohort on trying to find alternate pathways to identify gifted students as well. So that'll be another tool. All right, any questions about ADE requirements, all the things we went over really quickly? Burning desired questions. Yep.
Yeah, I just want to for Arizona percentile, is it 95% for Arizona and higher?
97.
97. Okay.
Many districts will say, okay, well, we know 97 is what we expect in those areas. If we did that, we might not have a lot of kiddos. So that's why they say cast that wider net.
I saw in there that you're looking at certification. Are you guys going to offer that class again for getting gifted certification?
Get out of my brain, Melissa. We're going to get there.
Okay.
I promise that's coming. Okay, so we're going to jump into gifted characteristics. Super interesting. I nerd out about this kind of stuff, but it actually is proven with research that kids that are gifted seem to have higher gray matter. And so even physically, they're different. And so it's interesting. And a lot of the times when we look at what gray matter does, is gray matter is that place for the neurons. That's the place for the highway in the brain, right? All the things when you're thinking right now, you're connecting to all these different things. You're thinking about past experiences, previous learnings. That is basically that highway of the gifted brain. There's 6 lanes going that way at the same time, 6 lanes are coming this way. So sometimes they look like all the things are happening, error, because all the things might be happening in their brains. And so they just have a lot of pathways for new knowledge. So it's interesting to learn about their physical characteristics and those differences. I want you to take 30 seconds to read this slide. And in the chat, I want you to drop one cognitive trait you've seen in action with a gifted kid at your school or a previous school if you're new to the role or the school, of one thing that you've seen a gifted kid do that's on this cognitive traits list. So drop that in the chat. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do that. I love it. Yep. I'm seeing so many things. They're the ones that sound like the little mini adults. They're the ones that are like, Ms. Zimmerman, you spelled that wrong. And I'm like, thank you. I did it on purpose for you to find it. And that's how we catch it because they always, call us out. Love it. Next one is the emotional characteristics. Please read over that and then do the same. What is one characteristic that pops out to you that you're like, oh, yep, seen that in action? Some great reflections. Big ones that I know, they have that perfection infection. They think they're going to fail. They don't want to even try it. I have some of my gifted teachers. They do the same things. And then extremely sensitive. Absolutely. Oh, sense of justice. They are the judge, juror, and executioner of all the things. They will tell you when something's not fair 100% of the time. Next is social characteristics. Do the same thing for me, please. Read through that. Drop something in the chat. I love it. I see the will not stop until it's perfect. I've seen a gifted kid in an art class crumble up a piece of paper about 25 times because the lines that they were making were not perfect. And so we see a lot of that. We see a lot of, I haven't finished, so you can't move on to the next thing because they haven't finished quite yet. So we've all been there. And yes, they're usually your chatty Cathys. So gifted characteristics, especially important to go over, especially with our teachers, because sometimes they see these and I've seen teachers say, oh, that might be a 504 for them talking. We might need to get them on a behavior plan. And I'm going to tell you so many times, my big question to them is, well, do you think they could be gifted? So something important to note, super important to go over those characteristics with teachers. The next thing is the nomination form. I don't know how long each of you have kind of been in RSD, but with Karen Eager, she was just amazing and mentor to me. And I think to a lot of you too that know her, she had this gifted nomination form. So it went over the characteristics. And then once the teachers started to reflect and see kids' names come up several times, they started to think, oh, that kid might be gifted. This is a good first step before you even start and throw out the word referral. This gets them in that cognitive reflection space. So I've adapted it because we used to have copies we'd give out. I'm going to do an electronic version of that so you can give that to your teachers when you do this roadshow. So what is the process? It's not much different from what you're used to. I'm just going to kind of break down the sections that need to be a little stronger. Same thing, we're going to do that online referral. I know everyone was like, yes to the online referral. It made things easier. We're going to keep that process. The only thing that really is the thing that we're going to have to troubleshoot because it's the new world together is that permission to test form. So if you're needing them to take a picture, you send it to them via email, they mark it up with their marking up tools, and then you email it to me, that's fine. But we can kind of troubleshoot that together if parents don't want to come in and sign a paper. Okay. After you have that permission to test and that referral link that you filled out, we will, as a testing team, and we'll decide who that's going to be. It could be you if you're open. It might be some instructional coaches or SLIs, APs that want to be a part of that team, some district personnel. We will administer those tests, and then typically within just 2 to 3 weeks, we have the notification process where we send out a letter to the families. We notify you, and you then notify the teacher and anybody else that needs that information, principal, who else? All the people. That's your next thing. So from there, adapting because of all the fun things we're experiencing during COVID, we've pushed the testing to at least November to get us that chance to get the referrals out there. Teachers are still trying to get a good gather on their kiddos and everything with this online learning. And then we'll keep those winter, spring pieces there, but we still have to offer those 3 testing cycles. So just for your knowledge, November 1st is when we'd like all your referrals by for the first cycle. Okay, and you keep trucking along. This is that gifted referral link. You have the link on your agenda. So what I'd like you guys to do now, I want you to take 1 minute to physically open the link and make sure you can open it. So you can find that link in our session agenda here. You'll see this. There's all sorts of links. If you scroll down, it should be on that second page where it says referral form link here. You can click that, it'll open a hyperlink, and your form should look like this. So please try that now. Give me a thumbs up reaction if you got it. Yes. Got 3 thumbs up. 4 thumbs up, 5 thumbs up. Awesome. I'm gonna wait for like a 50% completion rating. So once I get like 3 more thumbs, I'll move on. Oh, another thumbs up. 2 more.
Jessica, last year when we did this, I had the teachers fill out the form and I put it in here because I didn't want to get it all messed up. But then is there a way that outside of that, that they could give us their lunch numbers and everything on some kind of form? Because I don't know, I just like to keep record of what kids are supposed to be tested. And that way it's something that as a coordinator, I can have that.
Absolutely. So if you want them to fill out the form, you're fine to do that.
Oh, I don't want that. I wanted to fill it out, but I have to be able to get access to
Yeah,
kids' age number.
the physical paper, right? So you
Yeah.
can give them the physical paper. That's totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can provide that too if that's your process and that's what's working for you. Totally fine. Okay, so we're gonna bop over. We'll come back to all that fun stuff here shortly, but gonna keep trucking along. These are the permission to test for gifted services. There are links there as well. So I want you to, on the same exact document that we were just on, I want you to make sure you can open the parent permission to test in English and in Spanish there. Go ahead and try that for me. It should take you to the RSD website where it opens up the permission to test. If you got it, give me a thumbs up on your reaction tool or on your screen. Perfect. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And a laughing face. Thank you, Jenny. Not a laughing face.
No, I'm crying. I can't open it.
Jessica, it's not letting me open it at all.
I can't open it.
Okay.
Where am I clicking on the wrong thing? Where am I supposed to click?
So the gifted coordinator
Oh,
launch,
I don't have that.
that's totally fine. I'm going to drop it in the chat real fast so you can have that in front of you. And then you're going to see a section that says gifted identification. And then you'll see the link that says parent permission test English Spanish. Good? All right. Let me know if still in a few minutes you can't do it. Drop it in the chat for me.
Jessica, we also have this available online, right, on the district website?
Sure do. I put it on all the places.
Okay.
There's one under your chair. Like it's everywhere. Literally,
Thank
I
you.
put it all the places.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So then from there, we get students to test. This is an example of the nonverbal test on COGAT. Once they take their test online, you'll get the results. The test is 9 subtests from the 3 areas of verbal, nonverbal, and quantitative, so it is quite lengthy. But then they do pretty good. They're intuitive, these lovely kids. And then you get the scores and reports that focus on the composite of the verbal, quantitative, nonverbal score, along with the age percentile rank. That's what we look at for that 97th to, 90th in our district, 85 if it's our gifted ELs, in at least one of the areas. So one of our sessions will be reading the data and reading the reports. And I also want to add you all as data managers in Riverside so you can pull up the reports whenever you would like to, and you don't have to wait on me. So I'm pretty sure you'd like that, so you can go in at your own whim, just on a Sunday, kick back, look at all your data. Okay, so that it will be coming to you eventually. What if they don't qualify? This is something we could do better, is an alternative pathway for qualification. And I'm excited that Dr. Danny shares that vision with us this year on looking at the whole child, not just the test score, which is obviously counted, but looking at a lot of different data points to look for qualification. So we used to have this a few years back. We're bringing it back, Roosevelt Admissions Matrix, which is a rubric base that looks still at percentile and achievement, but it also looks at the child a little more holistically. It is done with a team, so myself, you as the gifted coordinator, the child's gen ed teacher, and typically a principal or an admin is sitting on this team, and we all work together to determine qualifying. Okay. If a kid doesn't qualify, this is where you say, hey, Jessica, oh, I really feel like they should go the RAM route, and then we go from there, okay? The notifications then go to parents if they're eligible, ineligible, or if they're RAM eligible. Basically, RAM eligible means they get services here in RSD, but they're not necessarily at the mark if they were to transfer outside of our district. They're not guaranteed those services because different school districts can dictate their own entrance levels for gifted programming. So that is something we explain to parents if they are RAM eligible. So they're not going over and being like, well, we're gifted in RSD at 86. Well, we kind of explain to them what that means. All right, any questions on the testing qualification process? No? Oh my gosh, you guys are really smart. We're gonna keep going. All right, qualifying areas, there are 3. The first one is verbal. I want you to take a moment to read the screen. So a big part of this is that little mini adult, right? They're having conversations. They're the ones that are like, how is the pandemic? And they're like, and they bring up this big word you've never heard before, which happened to me yesterday when I was servicing gifted kids. I don't even know the word still. It's that big, and I've never heard of it before. And she goes, basically, Miss Zimmerman, it just means it's like a sense of weirdness. I'm like, well, thank you for explaining. Those are your little ones that are just super nerds about words. They love alliteration. They love it. They're the best with those things. So you've probably seen those kiddos around. Those are typically your quick readers. This is a big one that is a big misconception for a lot of your teachers, and a good way to clarify this is nonverbal does not mean they don't talk. It is just a way to say they have great spatial awareness, or what I like to call it is picture smarts. They think in pictures. They do well with those processing in pictures. They're typically your ones that can take things apart and put them back together. They're your little engineers. They're your tinkers. They're, you know, that whole Rubik's Cube kiddo. It's typically this one. And so I like to point these ones out just because sometimes this is an abstract area for some people to understand, and 80% of our kids qualify in this area. So it's important to get.
I've always noticed those nonverbal kids are amazing artists. Like the past 3 years, every time I see a kid that does this amazing artwork, like detail oriented, I always have them gifted tests and they come out nonverbal. So if those ones that can draw, like, oh, amazing. That was always a clue for me.
I love that connection. And that is a great look for. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Melissa. And then the last one is quantitative, which like pretty intuitive there, is good with that, those mathematical concepts. All right, looking at our special populations, we have our twice exceptional, which is our both ends of the rainbow babies. We have some with a little bit of sprinkle of potentially a learning disability, but also functioning in the level of high aptitude in a different area. We used to have a twice exceptional list somewhere. We need to get better at finding that because it's not indicated anywhere right now. So if you have a kid that is receiving SPED services in addition to gifted services, which that is the case, I do need you to email me so we have like a good list of our kiddos that fall into that LD special twice exceptional 2E label. We have our kiddos with ADHD also with extreme giftedness, and then our little perfectionists. They really, really struggle, like I said, with that perfection infection. So important to understand that while they might be high achieving, they're needing support in some of those areas. Okay. Something important to note, just looking at research with gifted kids, commonly with learning, but especially with our gifted kids, if a connection cannot be made with new information, one has to be created. So this is an example of you're sitting in your class and you're like, all right, we're gonna learn about birds. And Johnny's like, Miss, I saw a bird at the zoo. And you're like, hey, Johnny, that's off task, okay? We gotta focus on the topic here. Well, that's that gifted kids connection, and that is them rebuilding and building and establishing those neural pathways. So super important for your gifted kids to give them that opportunity to connect to something old to build new information. So that activate prior knowledge of your lesson plan section was like specially designed for those gifted kids. They need that to create new knowledge. So if they typically shout out, maybe creating a journal where they can put that down because they really need that support. Something that I always found interesting too, sometimes if they're highly gifted, they might already know information going into a lesson. That's why we pre-test, because poor Johnny, I don't want him sitting there when he has it at 95% on the pre-test. So it's important to pre-test our kiddos. Not, it's good practice in teaching overall, but especially for our gifted kids to make sure we're not wasting their time too. Because a lot of the times after your model or your guided practice question 1, they're ready. They're ready to go. Maybe they're even checked out because they got it. All right, servicing our gifted learners. So something that's incredibly important, gifted standards are not just Common Core standards, but harder. I actually heard that once from someone and I laughed out loud and I was like, I'm sorry, I just laughed in your face a little bit. And it's because our gifted learners, the gifted standards are so incorporated with SEL, and it's so special that this year districts put a huge focus on SEL because our gifted kids, all of our kids need it. It's one of those things I'm going to keep coming back to. It's good practice, but our gifted kids need it. They have these intense feelings. They're a little perfectionists. They struggle. They think they're different. This is the perfect time to embed these standards into teaching. And it all starts with looking at the gifted programming standards. So really quickly, I do want you to go into the programming standards. So you have that as a part of your tool belt. So on this same launch agenda sheet, please scroll down and look for the section that says gifted standards and click on the link to those pre-K gifted standards. We are going to have a session where we dig a little deeper in this, but I just want you to at least have it so you can get to it. Give me a thumbs up if you're there, or at least know where to go. Awesome. Okay. So a big portion of gifted servicing is to provide a continuum of services for our gifted kids. Historically, I'm going to just kind of go through how we've gone through gifted in the past. We used to have a magnet hub program out of some of our schools. Lassen hosted a hub model for us and also self-contained classes over for gifted kiddos. We also had this out of Julian as well. We moved to a resource pull-out program for several years where they had several teachers that went to different schools to do services throughout the week. We support gifted kids in our normal classes through differentiation and acceleration on special cases. That is something as a gifted coordinator, we are going to have a topic just on acceleration based on your intake surveys you gave me, saying you want more information on that. And then cluster grouping was a model we went into last year. Something that's important to know about cluster grouping is it's defined as 5 kids or more. Well, if you don't have 5 kids or more to cluster group, it is going to be difficult to provide services. So it's super important that if we do have a cluster grouping model, I'm not saying it's a bad model, I'm just saying we're not built for capacity right now for it for a few reasons. One, we have about 10 teachers in the whole district endorsed, which means that if we're providing cluster grouping, we need either endorsed or, like Melissa said, moving towards an endorsement through endorsement classes being provided. So we are a current cluster grouping model, and we will maintain that, I guess, label until we reform as a task force our plan for our continuum of services. So right now we're doing the best that we can to provide support for our gifted kiddos. within the regular classroom. Okay. We talked about what that looks like with content, process, and product. Some ways that might look are with things like tic-tac-toe menus. They have different adjusted things like anger maps that support SEL. So there's a lot of different resources, and we'll kind of get into resources a little deeper here in a second. So what I'd like you to do is I have 2 resources for you to dive into. I want you to at least open one website and try to find one activity you might use with whether it's one gifted kid or a group of gifted kiddos. There's the Gifted Guide, which is a great resource, or I developed a site for my gifted kiddos because I'm servicing the gifted kiddos at my school. You can take a look at either one of those sites. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do that. So if you need to get out of this, these are linked on the presentation itself, but it's also linked here on the session guide. You can go to this website. Here are some units. You scroll all the way down, my site's here. Thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay. I'm gonna need 2 minutes. It's even less. Sorry, crunching all the time up. Lots of stuff. All right, I'm gonna have us come back. So one thing I'd like you guys to do, you can either share this with your teachers that are supporting their gifted kids or dive a little deeper into that because they already have pre-created units for you, all sorts of different areas supporting all sorts of different types of learners. So it is a really cool resource. I want to take 1 minute to literally speed through the rest of this. So we do want to get our parents involved as well as you if you're interested in the task force. Here's the link to sign up. So I'm not going to have you do it now, but when we end or at some point, if you could before next week, if you're interested to sign up for the task force where you can sit in and have some input on gifted, please feel free. There's also a teacher programming questionnaire. So let's say they're like, well, I do care about gifted and I want to, but I can't sit on the task force. They can fill out this questionnaire so their voice is heard. There's also a really cool thing Dr. Danny said today that she would pay for some parents to go to this AAGT Parent Institute. So if you have parents that are interested, some that are super excited and they're your big advocates for their kiddos, please fill out this interest link with their name and their number so I can contact them and we can get them on the list for that. In addition to, if you would like to attend, you can fill that out as well. So you can attend the Institute on October 17th. So fill that out if you can, as soon as you can. The last piece, these are all the links. So I'm gonna go quickly. Text me if you need me. My number's there, add it. I'm available from 8 to 4. What I mean is when I get home at 4 o'clock, I stare at my baby. So I love you. I'll look at your text. I'll answer you at 8 a.m. in the morning. Next one, you want to be on the task force, fill out the link. You want to be on the task force, but you can't. You want to say all the things you feel, put it in the survey link. Do you want to come to this? Fill out this link. You want to do a hybrid class online and get your endorsement classes? What? Fill out this link. And then this is all the stuff you were tasked to do. So this is a little gifted coordinator checklist. You've been given all the things and all the information. So basically from here, take all the information I'm giving you and disseminate to your staff. And then I'm going to open it up for questions real quick for those that want to stay and ask questions and answer questions. For those that are ready to go home and spend time with their babies, their fur children, their loved ones, go ahead and do that. And then I'll send you a calendar invite for our next coordinator meeting. That's it. I'm out. So if you want to leave, you're fine. If you want to stay for questions, you're fine. If you have questions, you just come off and be like, hey, I have a question.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay, yes.
Yes. So I had informed another teacher in regards to the endorsement, and she wanted to know, can other teachers be a part of that as well?
Yeah, so basically, if I have enough, this is my pitch to Dr. Dania, she doesn't even know it yet. So if I get enough people that are like, I want to get gifted endorsed, I will create Canvas courses for you to go through and then hybrid check-ins. But I want to get paid for creating those courses. So she'll have to find money to pay me for those courses. But it doesn't really help me to be like, 2 people want to get endorsed. But if I send her this link that's like, 75 people want to get endorsed, then maybe we'll do that. So that's my plan.
I'll let her know. And
Okay.
in regards to the, I don't know if it's easy or not, but the permission slip for tested for gifted services, I'm creating folders as well. I am going to create an e-folder with this. However, I felt like it needed to be updated, and I don't know if that's an easy task to do, such as when I look at it, let me see. I'm not sure what slide it's on, but if you can add on there a school name, like a line for our school name and the student's ID number, and what else did I have to write? Oh, if they were Spanish or English, that would be.
On the permission to test?
Yeah, yes, for the parents. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because I will always have to write that on there at the bottom.
So Spanish, do you want to make it like a section where you have a place to write? So it would be like ... office use only, almost, where you have a place where you can fill it in. Spanish, English, checkbox, a little number for lunch number, and then you said school name.
Yes, it'll be easier for you because I remember last year she was like, just write it on there somewhere, because then we will have to take that paper and scan it in, so she'll get it. But she probably, the first batch, I don't think I wrote the names on. So
okay, no, that's totally fine. Yeah, I can add that. I'll talk to Heidi about the form, if maybe someone owns it, and if we have the editable doc, we can update that. If not, I can create it. That's totally fine.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Any question, Parveen, La Rosa? La Rosa, you got a question, boo? You come off of mute, though.
No, I was just saying goodbye and enjoy your bundle of joy.
Oh, thank you. I will.
Bye, Jessica.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Parveen.